Global food shortages are becoming an increasingly pressing issue in today's world, and the reality is more complicated than most people realize. At first glance, it may seem like a global paradox. The world produces enough food to feed everyone, so why are millions of people still going hungry? The problem is not simply about food production, but rather about food distribution, the impact of climate change, geopolitical conflicts, economic inequality, and unsustainable agricultural practices. Understanding the reasons behind these shortages requires a deep dive into the complex forces shaping our food systems. One of the key factors driving global food shortages is climate change. Rising temperatures, unpredictable weather patterns, droughts, floods, and wildfires are all wreaking havoc on agricultural production worldwide. Extreme weather events have become more frequent and intense, leading to crop failures and reduced yields. For instance, many regions that were once ideal for growing certain crops are now facing unfavorable conditions, and agricultural systems that relied on predictable weather patterns can no longer function as they once did. The increasing prevalence of heat waves, particularly in critical breadbasket regions like North America, South America, and parts of Africa, has drastically impacted crop viability, reducing global food supplies. In addition to changing weather patterns, the changing climate exacerbates the frequency of pests and diseases, further threatening crop yields. For example, the spread of plant pests such as locusts and the expansion of plant diseases are directly linked to warmer temperatures and more unpredictable weather. When these issues arise, they can devastate entire harvests, resulting in severe food shortages in certain regions and globally affecting commodity prices. The rise in temperature is also disrupting the ecosystems that rely on a balance of flora and fauna to support food production, creating a cascade effect that harms food security. In parallel with climate change, the issue of war and political instability plays a crucial role in food insecurity. Armed conflicts, particularly in regions like the Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa, have not only caused immense human suffering, but also disrupted food production, distribution, and access. In war-torn countries, infrastructure is often destroyed, including roads, ports, and warehouses that are essential for transporting food from farms to markets. This breakdown in supply chains makes it difficult for people to access food, even in areas where it is being produced. For instance, in countries like Yemen, Syria, and South Sudan, ongoing conflicts have led to the collapse of food systems, pushing millions of people to the brink of starvation. Moreover, in many conflict zones, agricultural land is either rendered unusable or left untended due to the dangers posed by violence. Displaced populations often have little to no access to farming tools or resources, and in some cases, they are unable to cultivate food, even if they wanted to. International aid efforts are frequently hindered by political obstacles and logistical challenges, making it even more difficult to ensure that food reaches the people who need it the most. In these circumstances, food becomes a weapon of war, as access to food is sometimes strategically withheld from civilian populations, worsening the crisis. Another critical factor contributing to global food shortages is economic inequality and the structures of global trade. Wealthy countries and multinational corporations often have disproportionate control over food systems, influencing both production and distribution in ways that exacerbate hunger in poorer nations. The global food trade is driven by market dynamics that prioritize profit over the equitable distribution of resources. Subsidies in wealthier countries often support large-scale, industrial farming, while small-scale farmers in developing nations struggle to compete. This imbalance leaves many countries unable to produce enough food for their populations and reliant on expensive imports. Moreover, food distribution is frequently influenced by market forces that prioritize the most profitable commodities. This can mean that staple crops that are critical to food security in many regions, like rice, maize, and wheat, are produced in smaller quantities than necessary, or that they are grown for export rather than local consumption. This creates a situation where food is available in certain regions, but is either out of reach due to cost or inaccessible because it is being shipped to wealthier markets. At the same time, food waste is another contributing factor to the global food shortage crisis. It is estimated that roughly 1/3 of all food produced globally is wasted. This waste occurs at various stages of the food supply chain, from farm to table. In wealthier countries, a significant portion of food waste happens at the consumer level, as individuals and households discard perfectly edible food due to over-purchasing or cosmetic imperfections. On the other hand, in many developing countries, food waste occurs during storage, transportation, or post-harvest handling, as poor infrastructure and lack of resources make it difficult to preserve food until it can be consumed. Improving food distribution infrastructure and reducing waste could be critical steps in alleviating the strain on global food supplies. The growing demand for food, fueled by population growth, is also contributing to food shortages. The global population is expected to reach nearly 10 billion by 2050, and with more mouths to feed, there will inevitably be more pressure on food production systems. Urbanization, changing diets, and increasing income levels are also contributing to greater demand for food, particularly for animal-based products like meat and dairy. The production of meat and dairy requires significant resources in terms of land, water, and feed, making it less sustainable in the long run compared to plant-based diets. As global diets shift toward more resource-intensive foods, the strain on the planet's food systems intensifies. Beyond these immediate causes, there is the issue of unsustainable agricultural practices. Large-scale industrial agriculture, which relies heavily on chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and monoculture farming, is damaging the environment and depleting the natural resources needed for long-term food production. Soil degradation, water scarcity, and loss of biodiversity are all consequences of modern farming practices that prioritize short-term yields over long-term sustainability. As soils become less fertile, water resources are drained, and ecosystems are disrupted, the ability of agricultural systems to produce enough food for a growing global population becomes increasingly uncertain. In many parts of the world, small-scale, sustainable farming practices could be a solution to the problem of food shortages. These methods focus on soil conservation, crop diversity, and using local resources efficiently, which can help create more resilient food systems. However, small-scale farmers often face significant challenges, including limited access to credit, training, and markets. Empowering these farmers with the tools and resources they need to succeed could go a long way toward addressing global food insecurity. Solutions to global food shortages must also involve improving food distribution systems. One of the most effective ways to address food insecurity would be to create more localized and equitable food networks that prioritize direct access to food for vulnerable populations. This could involve strengthening local food systems, improving the efficiency of food supply chains, and investing in infrastructure that makes it easier to get food from farms to consumers, especially in remote or underserved areas. Additionally, the reduction of food waste through better management practices and consumer education could play a critical role in ensuring that more food reaches those who need it. Ultimately, addressing global food shortages is a multifaceted challenge that requires global cooperation, innovative solutions, and a rethinking of our current food systems. As climate change, war, economic inequality, and unsustainable agricultural practices continue to threaten food security, it is crucial that we take urgent action to create a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable global food system. This may involve shifts in policy, changes in consumer behavior, and a commitment to sustainable agricultural practices. By working together to address the root causes of food insecurity, we can ensure that everyone has access to the nourishment they need to live healthy, fulfilling lives. If you found this eye-opening, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, join the conversation, and help spread the word for a more sustainable world.